Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. I pressed the little record button on her digital voice recorder. It's the kind with a tiny red light that winks at me like it knows what I'm about to do. I found it on her desk when I came home early from work today, still half buried in the clutter of her files and printouts. She must have left it there by accident. Or maybe she wanted me to hear something. God knows. There's an odd hush in the house, like it's holding its breath, waiting for me to get on with it. A single overhead bulb flickers, casting jittery shadows along the kitchen wall. I stand there in my rumpled shirt, my tie askew, sweaty from the confrontation. I keep rehearsing in my head, but can't bring myself to enact. On the counter, one sock dangles from the laundry basket, and the rest of the hamper's contents, her clothes, my clothes, sprawl out in tangled lumps of fabric. Dirty laundry. Literally, it smells faintly of sweat, and that sweet, lingering perfume she used to wear only for me. It's all rotten now, like an echo of something that once felt warm and safe. I don't hear her voice on the recorder, at first. There's a beep, some muffled footsteps, then the scratchy sound of a chair scraping across the floor. My heart picks up speed. I thought I was past being shocked, but I realize I'm trembling. Maybe I'm afraid of hearing something I'll never unhear. I almost turn it off. But then I catch her voice, a rehearsed line, a practiced pitch, the one she uses when she speaks at city council events. Soft, lilting, unbelievably self-assured. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this honor. I stand before you today. A short laugh. Then another beep. Then a man's voice, low, teased with laughter. Come closer, I can't hear you from all the way over there. Then static. I hear movement, I hear her sigh. It's definitely her. Then nothing but a digital hum. She must have paused the recording, or maybe it cut off. I stand there, listening to nothingness, until it stops. In that silence, I'm hit with memories as if they're bricks dropping from a great height. They slam into my skull, bury me in confusion. How did we get here? We were a decent couple, once, something real. I remember the first time I saw her. Rebecca, stepping out of her car in a beige pencil skirt that hugged her hips just enough to make me swallow a bit too hard. She'd flashed me a polite, professional smile and extended her hand. Rebecca Carter, pleased to meet you. Before we got engaged, before she took my last name and became Rebecca Anderson. That was a lifetime ago, or so it feels. I close my eyes. The hamper is right there, reeks of day-old sweat. There's a coffee stain on my work shirt. I smell whiskey on my own breath. This is the new normal. Me alone, rummaging through the fragments of my sanity, trying to figure out when everything rotted from inside. The moment she left that little box on the passenger seat. The moment I found the note with someone else's name on it. Trevor, scrawled in a confident, masculine hand. For you, my hero. I try to breathe, but I choke on the memory. I guess that was where it really began, or maybe that was just where I finally woke up. The box was small, with a pink ribbon. She left it there like it was no big deal, like I wouldn't see the card, like I wouldn't notice the name. I remember rummaging in the car, trying to find my charger. My phone was dead. I was half late to a meeting. My fingers touched that box. I pulled it out and read the note. For you, my hero. Love, Trevor. My hero. I'd thought I was her hero. I stared at it for a good minute before my heart started pounding so loud I thought the neighbors might hear. The rest of that day is a blur, except for the look on her face when she saw me holding it. She froze. Then she forced a laugh and said it was just a friendly inside joke. I was too dumbfounded to press. I ended up letting it slide, letting it stew, letting it slowly poison me from the inside. But that night I listened to her breathing in bed, feeling the cold stretch of mattress between us. I wanted to ask so many questions, to rip the truth out of her. I didn't. I swallowed everything down, hoping it was a misunderstanding. 3 weeks passed. I didn't speak to her more than the bare minimum. She had her big speech coming up. The city's awarding her Woman of the Year, a bright, polished trophy for her public image. Our phone rang nonstop with invitations, event details. She seemed anxious but also excited. I forced a supportive smile, nodded at all the right moments, even helped her shape her speech. A loyal husband to the last. Meanwhile, inside me, the suspicion festered. And then I found the photos. Or maybe they found me. I rummaged through her laptop, searching for an old spreadsheet she swore was saved in a shared folder. Instead, I discovered a hidden directory. Curious. I clicked. The first few images were random city festival pictures, until they weren't. It was her in some hotel bathroom, hair still damp from a shower, wearing a white towel and the biggest grin. A man was behind her, flexing in the mirror like an idiot. He wore a firefighter's cap. And she typed, "Can't wait to see you again, my hero." My hero. That same phrase. Something in me snapped, but I kept my mouth shut. I closed the folder, fought the urge to smash the laptop into pieces. That night, she was so busy practicing her lines she didn't even notice how quiet I was. Or maybe she did, but she pretended not to. The next morning, I saw her in the kitchen, reading over her final version of the speech. She was wearing that navy blazer she loves, the one that fits like a glove. Her hair was pinned neatly. She had the same face she shows the public, serene, accomplished. It made my stomach twist. I touched her shoulder gently, a gesture I'd always done, and she placed her hand over mine. Familiar, warm, but also empty. No spark, no guilt in her eyes, just a well-practiced facade. I almost confronted her right then, demanded answers. But I swallowed it again. After that, the days blurred into each other until I got the idea. I don't even know where it came from, but once it was lodged in my brain, I couldn't let it go. I thought, she's going to present a slideshow at that city gala, pictures of her philanthropic work, bullet points about her achievements. The entire local council would be there, plus cameras, reporters. I thought about how easily I could replace the slideshow. I know her password. I know exactly how to slip backstage. I told myself it was revenge, a petty, humiliating revenge. Then I told myself she deserved it. A swirl of guilt and fury and heartbreak took hold of me, and I fed off it like a starving dog. I spent the night before the event copying the pictures of her and Trevor from that hidden folder. The lines are burned into my memory. Her bright grin, that damned firefighter's cap. My heart hammered the entire time, but some twisted part of me felt alive, felt a grim sense of purpose. Then morning came. She left early, anxious to check the stage, check the microphone, make sure everything was perfect for her big triumph. I arrived about an hour later, telling the staff I was her husband, the one who needed to finalize the presentation for Mrs. Anderson. They showed me to the computer backstage. I inserted my flash drive. I replaced her official slideshow with the incriminating images. My hand shook, but I did it anyway. Then I stood in the third row, watching the seats fill with the local big shots, the cameras, the mayor, her colleagues, probably half our neighbors. I saw her from a distance, greeting them with her politician's smile, never suspecting a thing. The lights dimmed. She stepped on stage in a tasteful burgundy dress. Applause roared, and a hush fell. She started her introduction, voice confident, eyes shining. I thought, how many times did she use that same voice to lie to me? Then the big screen behind her flickered. For a second, it showed the opening slide of her official program. Her name, the city seal. Then it switched, abruptly, to the first photo. Her in a white towel, hair wet, leaning into Trevor's chest. The words, "For you, my hero," scrolled across the screen in huge lettering. A choking silence seized the auditorium. She froze. I heard someone gasp. A couple of ladies in the front row covered their mouths. I swear time stretched into a slow, painful eternity. Her face turned pale under the stage lights. She didn't scream, didn't shout, didn't defend herself. She just clutched her folder of notes tight against her chest. Then the screen flashed to the second photo, the third. Hotel bed, playful smirks, his firefighter uniform half undone. Laughter from somewhere, or maybe it was just a cough. In the audience, people started to murmur. I stood there, my heart pounding. I wanted her to say something, to try to beg for forgiveness, or to explain. But she didn't. She stepped back from the mic, turned, and walked off stage. No words. Nothing. And that was the hardest part. At first, nobody moved. Nobody even clapped. Except me. I gave a slow, sarcastic clap that echoed in the hush. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I stopped. I could feel my chest caving in. That's how it ended. She never came back on stage. I left right after. For a moment, stepping onto the street, I wanted to collapse. My knees felt weak, my gut twisted like a vice. The adrenaline had carried me through, but now I just felt hollow. I got home before she did and sat at the kitchen table. I placed a small cardboard box on the countertop, the same one she'd once left in my car with that pink ribbon. I took off my wedding ring and dropped it inside. Then I fished out the key to the house, the back door, the mailbox. My whole life in metal shapes. I tossed them in, closed the lid, slid it neatly to the center of the table. I added a note. You're free. Enjoy. Then I went to the bedroom, started shoving a few clothes into a duffel bag. I remember hearing the clock tick. 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 Each second marking the end of what I used to call my life. An hour later, she arrived. I heard the front door open, the rustle of her dress. I peered from the hallway, behind a half-closed door. She walked into the kitchen, saw the box on the table. I saw her shoulders tense, her posture waver. She opened it, read the note. I waited for her to break down, to scream, to curse me for humiliating her. Instead, she just lowered her head. Her hair fell in front of her face. She stood like that for what felt like ages. Then she sank into a chair. Her whole body went slack. No more perfect politician's composure. Her breathing sounded ragged. But I heard no sobs. No pleas. I turned away and headed for the back exit. The only thing I took besides my clothes was that voice recorder. She didn't try to stop me. I drove off, not sure where I was going, not even sure if I cared. A part of me wanted to die. That's the honest truth. I looked at the other cars on the highway, at the 18-wheeler rumbling in the next lane, and wondered if I should just turn the wheel and let fate do the rest. My entire existence, all my illusions about love, family, trust, had crashed down around me. A battered, bruised part of my mind whispered that I should keep living, if only to see what happens next. So I kept driving, tears burning at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. That night, I rented a cheap motel room near the interstate, the kind with an ancient AC unit that groaned like a dying animal. I tried to sleep but ended up staring at the ceiling until dawn. At some point, I realized I was clutching her recorder. I pressed play again, hoping to hear any scrap of explanation. But it was just that short snippet, her voice practicing lines, then a man's low chuckle. I closed my eyes and let it fill my head. By the time the sun rose, I was more exhausted than ever, but a quiet determination settled in my chest. I had to face the reality. I'd done what I did, and there was no taking it back. In the weeks that followed, I avoided seeing her. She tried calling once or twice. I didn't answer. She left a couple of voicemails that started with, "We need to talk." I deleted them without listening to the rest. My father reached out. He heard rumors, saw her meltdown in the local news. I told him I needed space. Work gave me personal leave after I explained there was a family situation. I didn't mention the affair or the scandal. I just said I had to sort out some issues. They seemed sympathetic. My colleagues asked if I needed anything. I politely refused. I spent those days drifting around in a haze of regret, anger, and, if I'm honest, a weird sense of relief. Because at least now I knew. The doubts were gone. The illusions were gone. She had chosen her path, and I'd chosen my revenge. Some nights, though, I'd find myself rewriting the scene in my head, a kind of sick highlight reel. The hush in the auditorium, the photos splashed across the screen, her stunned expression. The clarity of that moment. It wasn't satisfying in the way I'd imagined. I thought humiliating her would make me feel better, but it mostly left me hollow. I guess some nightmares don't fix themselves just because you reveal them to the world. About a month later, she finally sent me a text. I'm moving out of the house. Need to get my things. I'll be gone soon. That was all. I stared at the message, a part of me wanting to call her back and demand answers, or at least closure. But I didn't. I just sat on the bed in my little motel room, the chipped paint peeling off the walls, wondering if this was how 15 years of marriage was supposed to end. I forced myself to remember the good times, as if that might help. Our first anniversary trip to the Florida Keys, her in that yellow sundress, the smell of sunscreen and salt. The night we danced under cheap paper lanterns at a friend's wedding, me stepping on her toes, her giggling and calling me a clumsy oaf. The morning we brought home a stray puppy. He peed on the carpet. She freaked out. I tried to calm her down. We named him Oliver. That dog died a few years later, and we buried him under the oak tree in our yard. Memories like that. They used to make me smile. Now they were ghosts in my head, swirling around and refusing to let me rest. I wanted to hate her wholeheartedly, but I couldn't. I still loved who she'd been. I hated who she'd become. It was about 2 weeks after her text that Trevor walked up to me outside the local grocery store. I hadn't seen him in person before, at least not close enough to know it was him, but I recognized his face immediately. He was wearing civilian clothes, but the broad shoulders, the confident stride, the short cropped hair, this had to be the hero. He approached me slowly, like he was half afraid I'd punch him. I gripped my grocery bag tighter, told myself not to make a scene. We stood face to face in the parking lot, the heat of midday making the asphalt shimmer. He cleared his throat, tried to speak, but I cut him off with a single word. Why? He swallowed. Then he said, I'm sorry. Just like that. Like an apology was enough to erase the hole in my chest. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. He looked genuinely uneasy. He said, I never meant for it to happen that way. I didn't know you. She said you two were falling apart. I just stared at him, wanting to break him with my glare, wanting to throw him to the ground. He kept talking. I didn't come here to fight. I came because she's leaving town. She wanted me to. He paused, stammered a bit. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry too. That it was never about hurting you. I felt the hot rush of anger swell in me. He saw it on my face, took a cautious step back. I wanted to explode, but something in his eyes looked pitiful, like he was just a confused asshole who'd gotten in too deep. Maybe a younger me would have decked him, but my fists stayed at my sides. Doesn't matter, I muttered. She made her choice. You made yours. I made mine. He nodded slowly, sweat trickling down his temple. I guess. We all did, he said. I turned away without another word. He didn't follow. Didn't try to explain further. That night, I sat in my motel room, stared at the flickering TV, and listened to the hum of the AC. I pictured his face, the remorse in his voice, and I realized something. I didn't want her back. Not anymore. The well of pain inside me still existed, but it wasn't about trying to fix anything. It was about letting go of the illusions I had nurtured for so long. A week later, I drove by our old house. The for sale sign was hammered into the yard. The place looked deserted. I stepped out, found the front door locked, no sign of life. I peered through the windows. Empty rooms. The faint outlines on the walls showed where our pictures had hung. My heart twisted. The memory of that final day came rushing back. The little cardboard box on the table, The keys inside. The note that said, "You're free." I guess she took it literally. She sold the house, vanished. Maybe she went to Trevor's place. Maybe not. All I knew for sure was that she was gone, and I had no intention of tracking her down. In the following months, I had to face the empty corners of my life. My father tried to coax me back to Dallas, said he'd help me find a new job. My sister called, offering me a room in her basement, but some stubborn part of me wanted to stand on my own 2 feet right here. I found a small apartment in a quieter part of town, started working freelance marketing gigs from my laptop. The money wasn't great, but I got by. More importantly, it was something to occupy my mind, to prove that I wasn't just the shell of a man who let his wife's betrayal define him. Now and then, people from our old social circle recognized me at the store or the post office. They gave me sympathetic looks, or they stared awkwardly, not sure what to say. A few commented on the fiasco at the award ceremony. Something like, "That was rough, man." I just nod, say, "Yeah." No point explaining. A couple times, late at night when I was too tired to guard myself, I thought about ending it, plunging my car into a ravine or swallowing a handful of pills. Not because I missed her so much, but because everything felt pointless, colorless. The pain was too heavy some days, but I never went through with it. Maybe I was too much of a coward, or maybe some flicker of self-preservation told me I had more life to live. One afternoon, I was rummaging through my closet, reorganizing. That's when I found it, her voice recorder again. It had slipped behind a box of old receipts. I picked it up, turned it in my hands. Memories flooded me, that first day, hearing her voice, hearing Trevor's low murmur. My stomach churned, but curiosity tugged at me, so I pressed play. The final track wasn't the same snippet as before. I heard static, then a rustle, then her voice, quiet and shaky. "I don't know how to say this. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I messed up. I never wanted to hurt anyone, least of all you. You used to be my hero too." She let out a trembling breath. "Trevor is a good man, but he's not. He's not you. I'm so sorry." Then nothing but a long silence and a beep ending the recording. I dropped the recorder. It clattered onto the floor. My eyes blurred with tears. I thought about how easy it would have been for her to say that to my face, but she never did. Or how easy it might have been for me to confront her early on, before it festered. But we both failed, both betrayed each other in different ways. And this was the aftermath. I stepped outside onto my tiny balcony, the late autumn sun slanting between the buildings. I felt the crisp air on my face. And I stood there, letting the tears slip down my cheeks for the first time since the day at the auditorium. They weren't tears of regret for losing her. They were tears for the good that once was, for all the ways we drifted apart, for the part of me that died along the way. I realized in that moment that I needed to breathe again, to find a reason to keep going. Because time doesn't heal. It just wears things away, including our illusions, including our capacity to cling to old wounds. Eventually, I wiped my eyes, picked up the recorder, and placed it on the windowsill. I didn't destroy it or throw it away. I left it there like a relic of a past life. Then I grabbed my coat and left my apartment for a walk, letting the brisk wind remind me I'm still alive. The day stretched out before me, uncharted. I wanted to think about my next steps, maybe a new job, maybe volunteering somewhere. Small beginnings. Life after betrayal. I felt no rush. I had all the time in the world now that I was freed from that weight. Weeks slid by, and I found a quieter sense of routine. Gym in the mornings, remote work in the afternoons, sometimes a game of pickup basketball on weekends. I reconnected with a couple of friends I'd lost touch with. They never asked about the scandal, and I appreciated that. I never volunteered details. But the anger, the bitterness, they never fully disappeared. Sometimes at night, I'd jolt awake with a vivid memory of the auditorium scene. The hush, the shock, me standing up to clap. Then I'd lie there, feeling the old ache in my chest. I wasn't sure if I regretted humiliating her like that, or if I still took grim satisfaction in it. Maybe it was both. A year later, the house sold, the divorce finalized. She'd never contested anything. She signed the papers, and we both walked away. My father tried to talk me into counseling. "You went through a lot," he said. I shrugged it off, told him I'd deal with it on my own. Some days, I wondered if counseling might have helped. But I was stubborn, too proud, maybe. Or maybe I didn't want to rehash all the gory details. The one thing I knew was that every time I caught a whiff of that perfume, or saw a postcard of the Florida Keys, I'd feel that pang deep inside, like pressing on a bruise that never fully healed. I heard rumors. She moved, took a position in another city. Some folks said she was still with Trevor, that they were living together. Others said they broke up after a few months. I didn't care to find out which story was true. Either way, it didn't really matter to me. The past was done. It was a slow, draining process to accept that, but piece by piece, I let the old memories fade. Or at least, I let them rest. Once, late at night, I drove past the auditorium where I'd staged my revenge. The parking lot was empty, the building locked up for the night. I sat in my car, staring at the entrance where we'd both once walked in, smiling for the cameras. I remembered how proud I used to be, seeing her recognized for her work, thinking she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Hard to believe that same place was where everything came crashing down. I felt a hollow ache in my gut, but I also felt something new, a weird serenity, like I was done punishing myself. The scoreboard of revenge was closed. I'm no saint. A part of me still wishes I'd never fallen for her in the first place. Another part is grateful for the good years we had. That conflict might never be resolved, but life moves on whether we want it to or not. I turned the key in the ignition, left the parking lot behind, and whispered under my breath, "So long." Now, if there's one thing I learned, it's that betrayal carves a scar you can't fully erase. But scars mean you survive. You carry on, if only because the alternative is quitting. Some days I wake up with a weight in my chest, wondering if I'll ever be able to trust again. Other days, I feel almost normal, almost content, like a new version of myself is slowly taking shape. I don't know if I'll ever love like I did before. Maybe that's okay. Maybe some of us get one shot at that all-consuming devotion, and if it falls apart, we find a quieter, more guarded path forward. Or maybe I'm just making excuses. Hard to say. I do know that I kept that pink ribbon box in the trunk of my car, even after everything. Sometimes I open it just to remind myself of the day I discovered Trevor's note. A twisted trophy of heartbreak, I guess. I look at it and remember the moment I realized how naive I'd been. Then I close it and drive on. Maybe that's the best any of us can do, acknowledge our pain, then keep going. I also know that no matter what she might have told me afterward, no matter the apologies or the rationalizations, we were broken long before Trevor came along. He was just the final wedge. I don't hate him. He was a symptom of a bigger disease we both ignored. But I'll never forgive him, either, for stepping into my marriage and flaunting that hero label in her eyes. That's just who I am. I can live with that. People often ask me now, with careful tones and sympathetic frowns, "How are you holding up?" I usually give some polite answer like, "I'm fine, just moving on." The conversation ends there. They don't want the gory details. Maybe they sense that I'm not the same man I used to be, that I carry a bitterness behind my eyes. But I keep it contained. After all, I learned the hard way that life doesn't owe us neat resolutions. We do what we must, then pay the price. Some nights, especially when it rains, I let myself remember how she looked at me the day we said our vows. She was radiant, almost trembling with excitement, a tear in her eye when she slid the ring on my finger. I believed with all my heart we'd stand by each other forever. That memory used to tear me apart. Now it's just a ghost. If I close my eyes, I see it playing on loop, then receding like a wave at low tide. Gone before I can hold on to it. Yes, sometimes I still want to die. But it's no longer an active want, more of a passing thought, like an echo that resonates and fades. On bad days, I lie in bed, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if it would be easier to check out. Then I think, but who'll water the plants? Or who'll pay the bills? Or some other mundane anchor that ties me to the world? And I get up, go about my day, feed myself, do my job. Vengeance is a funny thing. I used to think it would set me free. It did, in a way, but not how I expected. It left me with emptiness, forced me to rebuild from scratch. I visited my mother's grave one Sunday. She died years ago, a slow battle with cancer. I knelt in the grass, thinking how she taught me about loyalty, about kindness, about standing tall. She never once told me to take revenge, or to destroy someone I loved. But if she were here, I wonder if she'd hold me, tell me I did what I had to, or if she'd shake her head in disappointment. I'll never know. Still, I felt a little calmer after talking to her headstone for a while, letting the breeze swirl around me. I whispered that I miss her, that I hope I'm doing okay. Then I walked away, carrying that quiet comfort in my chest. Months rolled on. Work became busier. I started a new contract with a small biotech startup, which demanded more of my attention. In the evenings, I sometimes sat on my couch and read old Western novels, stuff about lone gunslingers wandering the desert, seeking justice or revenge. I guess I identified with their solitary existence, their acceptance that life is harsh. The more I read, the more I realize that every man eventually faces his reckoning, one way or another. Mine just came wearing a pretty burgundy dress and a big smile at a city gala. One cold evening, I went for a walk down by the local river. I guess I was feeling nostalgic, or maybe just lonely. The night was quiet, the water shimmering under the moonlight. I found a bench where we used to sit, me and Rebecca, feeding ducks on lazy afternoons. I stood there a while, letting the memories wash over me. Then I sat, letting the cold seep through my jeans, my breath rising in frosty puffs. For a moment, I let myself think. If she showed up right now, if she asked forgiveness, would I give it? The question twisted my gut. I knew the answer was no. Not because I wanted to cling to hatred, but because some things just can't be undone. Sometimes love is a fragile thread, and once it's snapped, you can tie knots, but it's never the same rope. And sometimes you can't tie it at all. I don't know if that makes me cruel or just pragmatic. All I know is that we all make choices we have to live with, and I made mine. So I left that bench, that old memory, behind and headed back to my apartment. Life moves on. As for Trevor, I never saw him again after that day in the grocery store parking lot. Maybe he moved away. Maybe he's still in town, but our paths never cross. I sometimes have weird half-dreams where he shows up at my door, tries to apologize again, or begs my blessing to be with her. I always slam the door in his face. Then I wake up with a bitter taste in my mouth. It's probably the whiskey I started keeping in my kitchen cabinet, a nightly ritual that helps me sleep. More than I'd like to admit, but I'm not proud. I'm just coping. The final time I heard from her was through a letter that arrived at my father's address. He forwarded it to me. It was short, written in her perfect, looping script. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can find peace. No return address. No phone number. I almost tore it up on the spot, but I slipped it into a drawer instead. Maybe part of me wanted to hold on to that final note, a memory of her last words, such as they were. Now, I'm just a man with a flawed heart, a battered conscience, and a story that no one wants to hear in too much detail. But there's a strange solace in telling it, even if the telling is mostly to myself. Because maybe somewhere out there, another poor fool will find himself rummaging in his wife's car, stumbling across a pink box and a note from a stranger, and he'll see a reflection of what happened to me. Maybe he'll do something different, something better. Or maybe we're all doomed to repeat the same mistakes until a final curtain. I honestly don't know. All I know is I survived, and I'm still here, breathing, trying to pick up the scattered pieces of a life that once felt whole. Some days, I'm almost grateful for the experience. It stripped away my illusions, forced me to confront who I really am. A stubborn, flawed man who can't stand betrayal and was willing to exact a brutal price for it. Good or bad, that's who I've become. Maybe that's the final takeaway. That we are the sum of our choices, plus the pain that shapes us. And sometimes, we don't find redemption or need closure. We just keep moving forward, day by day. Time doesn't heal. It only wears down the edges of our memories, makes them less sharp. Eventually, the dull ache is all that's left. You can live with a dull ache. It's the sharp edges that kill. If she ever asked me, in some imaginary future, if I'd do it again, change out her presentation, humiliate her so publicly, I don't know what I'd say. Part of me regrets it. Another part of me knows it was the only way to tear the veil and reveal who we both really were. That moment told me everything I needed to know about her, about myself, about the illusions we let ourselves believe. Maybe that harsh lesson is worth the pain. Maybe. All I can say for certain is this: once trust is gone, it's gone. And once you realize you've been living a lie, you have two choices: keep lying or break free. I chose to break free. I guess that's the closest thing to peace I'll ever have. It's not much, but it's mine. Tonight, I sit in my one-bedroom apartment, the lamp flickering, the window open to the cool night air. The city hum drifts in, cars, distant voices, a siren somewhere. I have half a mind to pick up that voice recorder and press play one last time, to hear her final apology. But I'm not sure I need to anymore, because I already know how I got here, and I already know it's over. I don't need her voice to remind me of the broken pieces. They're here, under my skin, in every breath I take. Maybe one day, I'll let someone else in, trust again. Maybe not. Right now, it doesn't matter. Right now, the only thing I want is to crawl under the covers, close my eyes, and hope tomorrow hurts a little less than yesterday. That's the kind of dream I can handle, one day at a time, until the last. I have no illusions about a happy ending. I don't even think in terms of endings anymore, just onward motion. Revenge didn't fix me. It just forced me to accept that life after betrayal is about building something new on scorched earth. And maybe, just maybe, this time, I'll be more careful about who I let claim to be my hero, or whether I bother playing the hero to someone else. Because that sweet smell of betrayal lingers, like caramel on a burnt skillet. Once you've tasted it, it never really leaves your tongue. Maybe that's the real lesson of all this. We endure, we carry our scars. We learn how to breathe again. And so it goes. Everything looked neat, orderly. I'd replaced the old bedding, the old decor, trying to erase the memory of that night. She came home smelling like a different life. I lay down on the new comforter, stared at the ceiling, and realized I was finally free. Free of the illusions, free of the desperate need to fix a marriage that was already broken beyond repair. Free to sleep, and for the first time in years, I closed my eyes and felt my mind drift into real rest. No prayers, no fear, no silent tears. In the dream that followed, I saw myself picking up a handful of shattered glass from the floor. I tried to piece them together to form a mirror, but they wouldn't fit. My own reflection was fragmented, unrecognizable. When I woke, my pillow was damp. I wasn't sure if I'd been crying or sweating or both. But my heart felt lighter, like a huge weight had been lifted. A few days later, I officially launched my new business from that small rented office. I invited some potential clients in, gave presentations, showed them prototypes. The positive response was exhilarating. My coworkers, some old friends and new hires, patted my back. "This is it, Mark," they said. "You're back on track." And in that moment, I realized maybe I was more alive than I'd been in years, even before Laura's betrayal, because I had no illusions to hide behind anymore. The numbness was turning into forward momentum, a kind of quiet hope. That evening, I bought a large aquarium for my son's room, bigger than the small one we'd had. He laughed in delight when he saw it. We placed neon rocks, a miniature treasure chest, plastic seaweed. The fish darted through them, carefree. My son giggled, pointing out how the water reflected on the wall. I crouched beside him, letting his joy fill a corner of my empty heart. "Dad," he said suddenly, "you look happier. Are we okay now?" I wrapped an arm around him, nodded. "Yeah," I replied softly. "We're okay. We're going to be okay." We settled into a routine. Laura and I communicated only about our son. Drop-offs, pickups, school events. She tried, once or twice, to speak with me about us, but I brushed her off. There was no us. Not anymore. Eventually, she stopped trying. About a month later, a Sunday morning, she knocked on the door. My son opened it before I could, leading her in. She was dressed casually, no trace of that sophisticated style she used to flaunt. She looked older, eyes tired, but calmer. "Hey," she said, glancing at me. "Can we talk for a second, while he's in his room?" I shrugged. "Sure." She waited until he slipped into the hall. Then she approached, arms folded, posture uncertain. "I just wanted you to know," she began, her voice quavering. "Rick and I, we're done. That life, that choice, it was a mistake. I'm focusing on my work, rebuilding my half of the event business." She looked at me as if hoping for a flicker of recognition. I know it's probably too little, too late, but I wanted to say it out loud. I felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but it was hollow. "That's your decision," I said evenly. "Doesn't change what happened." She nodded, tears shining. "I know. Part of me hoped it might matter to you that I ended it." I closed my eyes, exhaled a measured breath. "I'm not angry in the same way anymore," I admitted. "But it doesn't suddenly wipe the slate clean." She blinked, and a tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. "Okay." She stepped back, and for the first time, I saw how fragile she looked. "I'm glad you're sleeping again. You look better." I didn't respond, just watched her. She waited, maybe hoping for some sign of forgiveness, but I had none to give. So she left, quietly closing the door behind her. I stood in the foyer, motionless, until I heard her car drive away. Then I let out a long breath, shoulders sagging. It felt like an echo of everything that had passed, drifting away. It didn't hurt so much anymore, just felt final. Over the following months, I built a stable schedule with my son. I moved forward with my business. The house was quieter, but also more peaceful. I discovered new routines, sometimes waking early to run along the lake, sometimes staying up late to watch old Clint Eastwood movies, the ones Dad and I used to love. My phone never buzzed with frantic calls from her anymore. Our only connection was the life we created in our child. Some nights, after tucking him in, I'd stand by the aquarium, watching the fish drift. My reflection shimmered on the glass surface, slightly distorted by the water. I'd think of that dream with the broken mirror. Maybe I was piecing myself back together, but differently this time. A new shape, a man who'd survived betrayal and found a sliver of peace on the other side. One evening my son asked, "Dad, do you still love Mom?" A child's question, direct and disarming. I knelt down, searching for the right words. "I care about her because she's your mother," I said gently. "But sometimes grown-ups change. Sometimes love changes." I ruffled his hair. "But that doesn't mean we don't both love you." He frowned, as though trying to parse it. Then he gave a small nod. "I'm glad you're not so sad anymore." Those words stuck with me. I realized that somewhere in the long winter of heartbreak, I'd come out the other side with a quiet acceptance. I might never fully be the man I was before the affair, but maybe that was a good thing. That man was blind to a lot of signals. This new man understood that life could shift under your feet without warning, that illusions of safety could vanish in an instant, and that sometimes the only way to survive was to become stronger, colder, yet still keep your heart open enough for a child's smile. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of calm. I showered, dressed, sipped coffee in the kitchen while the sunrise glowed through the windows, and I realized that for the first time in ages, I didn't dread the day. I didn't fear walking out of this house and facing the world. The perfume was long gone, a ghost from the past. The tension that once knotted my stomach had loosened. Before leaving for the office, I looked around at the rooms that had once felt haunted. Now they felt mine. Maybe the walls still held echoes of betrayal, but they also held the promise of new memories. My new life was budding, uncertain but alive, and I intended to embrace it. No more nightmares, no more illusions. It was then I felt something crack open inside me, a sense of release or maybe forgiveness of myself for not seeing what had been happening under my nose. I understood, with a quiet finality, that I'd never again be that naive husband. I'd never again let someone step all over my trust without consequence. But I also wouldn't be defined by the anger. There was a difference between being strong and being hardened, and I knew which path I wanted to walk. I stepped out the front door and locked it behind me, the crisp air bracing on my face. In the car, I glanced at the passenger seat, empty. I thought of the day I brought those flowers to the women's club, how I sat there for hours, waiting for a wife who never appeared. I recalled the heartbreak that followed. My chest twinged. But then I started the engine, feeling the gentle rumble beneath me. I was heading to the office, to my project, to the future I was building. And for the first time in a very long while, I took a breath that felt clean and unburdened. By the time I turned onto the main road, the sun was high and golden. I whispered to myself in that old habit, but this time it sounded different. I caught a glimpse of my eyes in the rearview mirror, tired, maybe, but clear. And I said softly, almost like a vow, "I'm still here. I'm going to be just fine." I pressed the accelerator, merging into the flow of traffic, merging into the rush of a world I was finally ready to meet on my own terms. There would be new battles, new challenges, but that final hold she had over me, that false dream of what we once were, it had dissolved. And as I drove, I felt my body, my mind, my entire spirit returning to me, free of the weight that once crushed me from within. In that moment, I knew, beyond any doubt, that I had survived and become something stronger, something real, and I was done saying goodbye to who I used to be. Now, I was saying hello to the man I was becoming, one breath at a time.